you may be right that I was too tired when I was trying to read this book because I didn't even know that. I must have fallen asleep on the last page.
Yeah, for sure. It's like easily
I'm so embarrassed.
Easily the most memorable part of the book. It's incredible ending.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Hello, everyone. I'm Cody Troyer.
And I'm Brent Gaisford.
And we are the Hugonauts, here to review and discuss with you the best sci-fi novels of all time.
This week, we're discussing We by Yevgeny Zamyatin.
And Brent is going to give you the summary.
Oh, yeah. Okay, this week, back of the book, because this one's pretty good. Set in the 26th century AD, Zamyatin's masterpiece, I would not have written that part, describes life in the regimented totalitarian society of one state, sick name for the totalitarian society, ruled over by the all-powerful Benefactor. The inspiration for George Orwell's 1984, We is the archetype of the modern dystopia, or anti-utopia. Probably wouldn't have written that part either. A great prose poem detailing the fate that might befall all of us if we surrender our individual selves to some collective dream of technology and fail in the vigilance that is the price of freedom. But that part slaps. I definitely wouldn't have written that part either. It's so good. Okay.
This book is 226 pages, or 7 hours on audiobook, and it was published in 1924, though it was mostly released in other languages, translated, because it was 1924, and there were a lot of mean Russian guys around that time.
Yeah, those Russian guys didn't like it when you criticized authoritarianism because they knew what they were doing. Don't let them tell you otherwise.
Yeah, very direct criticism, and a very good novel, although Brent kind of...
I'll poop in the punch bowl. You don't have to poop in it for me.
Okay. I wasn't going to. I was going to say it was a pretty scathing review during your summary. I give it a 4 out of 5. It's really the first modern dystopia, or like what we think of as dystopian literature. It's the first novel that kind of set all the others on the path. And it's written by a man who understands how authoritarianism works, how a dystopia would work, and it has richer characters than I would expect from a book of that time, and especially in genre fiction. But Brent, what did you think?
So I recognize this is a very important book. I'm so happy that it got written so George Orwell could read it and then be like, yo, I could write this, but so much better. Because I'm happy he did.
Interesting.
Because I just kept falling asleep. That's like such a bad sign. I like even 3/4 of the way through, I was like, I can't read more than 4 pages. So I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 because I recognize how important it is. But even that, I'm like giving it points that like on its own merits, I don't think I would give it. Anyway, I'm sorry, Yevgeny. I'm so happy you wrote this.
Well, I'm going to try to convince you. I'm going to try to convince you otherwise, because I think it's A, better than 1984, and B,
what?
Yes, and
what?
B, I think you might just be falling asleep because you have an infant.
That's actually possible. I had that in my notes also. Wait, hold on though. Before we get into it, what's the next episode?
The next episode is going to be on The Expanse. We already did an episode on 1, 2, 3, so this one's going to be 4 through 9 / ranking them all.
Yeah,
all
exactly.
9 of them.
You got to talk about all of them a little. Anyway, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the next episode is definitely going to be for those of you who have read The Expanse. It's going to be an all spoilers all the time.
Or if you've watched the show but not read the book, let us go ahead and tell you why you should read the book.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, I mean, for one, because the show doesn't go 7 through 9, which are pretty great. But otherwise, let's get into We.
Yeah, hold on. One other announcement. We're going to kick off a new cycle of the book club. So if you're not on the Discord, get on the Discord. First step will be nominating books you want to read. Then we vote. You know the deal. But anyway, jump on Discord to nominate a book that you want to read together for the book club.
Yes, and we will read those books. And I just want to check something on my camera settings. New camera, just trying to make sure it's all working right. Okay.
I like how you squint so hard. You're squinting so hard.
It's a small screen and my vision is suboptimal.
Okay, all right.
What is the deal with dystopian novels and journals? Why is that the best way, clearly, to tell a dystopian story? It's always a character journal.
Oh, that's so true. Handmaid's Tale, 1984, this. Honestly, maybe it's because of this book. And then George Orwell, like, avowedly was just copying this book and making it better, in my opinion. And then maybe Margaret Atwood also read these. I don't know. And let's hold on, while we're saying that everybody stole Yevgeny's homework, the one person who didn't is Aldous Huxley, which is not a journal. So that might be my favorite, and this is one more reason.
It almost like he stole it a little bit in the way that it's like so clearly the counterpart. Like it's like it's like dystopian and bad, but it's like the opposite way of organizing a society. Anyways, in the society at first, I feel like doesn't feel that it's not as bad or threatening or like all of the ways that in other dystopian novels you feel like the individual is getting controlled. It feels like you could kind of do what you want and your needs are met. You just don't really have freedom of expression.
Yeah, but also everyone gets up at exactly the same time and like has they love the schedule. They're all like addicted to German rail schedule pornography.
Yes, I guess that's true. And also the sex is controlled.
Hold on. Wait, can we talk about that? Okay, so the rules of sex are you're allowed to put in a request to have sex with anyone you want, and then it gets met, which is an interesting idea. It's sort of about this like breakdown of relationships in the family. But the idea that immediately came into my head was like, how does this system work? The hotties would have lines, they'd just be getting gangbanged every night. Like, how does this system actually function? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. I hadn't thought about it. I just kind of took it at face value. There's, first of all, our main character, the one who's writing the journal, is D503. They all have like a letter and then a number. His assigned, the woman he is in a relationship with is 090. And then he also has a friend, R13, who's a poet, who is also kind of in the relationship with them. And then along comes I330, who lets the story continue. She is an interesting character.
She's just really, the system just cannot function with such a hottie in it. Yeah.
Though, speaking of, she is promiscuous. So, to your point, and it seems to work. So I don't think that's as much of an issue as like a typical dystopian novel where you're like, oh my God, this is crushing. This world we can't let this happen. This one's kind of like, all right. I mean, they're still doing stuff.
Yeah. They go to lectures and they like get to walk around. It's more like they all want to, it seems like at the beginning, they all want to be doing, they'll like it and they're all like opting in. It's like, it's like what Vladimir Putin says, where he's like, oh, well, everyone wants me to be the dictator, so I'm not the dictator, I'm the president. It's like that, but it seems like it's actually maybe true at the beginning. Yeah.
Kind of like a Brave New World at its face, you're like, well, I mean, I wouldn't want to live this way, but I could see it. Maybe hedonism is interesting. And then you figure out that to support that, there's this, subjugation of genetic level subjugation of most of humanity that is really horrific. But in it's all automated. Like, people of utopias would argue it should be that we don't have to focus on stupid tasks. We should have robots and computers do it. And that is true in
That's true. We also, though, do find out pretty quickly they have secret police, which are called guardians. You don't know who they are, but they're going to be reporting on you. And they are recording everything happening in all the public spaces, just like in 1984. And it reminded me of a question that I've had in the back of my head since our 1984 episode, when you told us all that as an audio engineer, the idea that you could record everything in public is so crazy. Since then, I have been wondering, if you really did live in a society like this with microphones everywhere, where should we have our meeting, our secret political meeting, that like the audio is so bad? Like in a lot of spy novels, they like go to a restaurant, because there's like a lot of conversations happening at once, or like where do I go to have my secret meeting, Cody?
In Silo, I liked how they did it in Silo, the TV show. They're having conversation. Whenever they're having conversations, they like turn on syncs and stuff. in their
Oh,
apartment.
so that's
I've
real.
seen it
That's
other
what we should
places
actually
too.
do.
Yeah, just make it noisier. Although I will say the technology is getting better and better. There's a lot of cleanup you can do forensically to still hear what people are saying. But yeah, if you went to a very crowded, noisy place, and it would be pretty hard to hear you. I think it's more likely that you could lip read based on a camera, or a computer could lip read you off a camera. So
Oh.
masks on, loud noise, have your conversations. That's the way.
That's tough. Bars and restaurants, the
IMO.
masks are off though. Okay, so we need like a party. We need a party, a mask party. So it's
Or you just have
crowded.
you just have every conversation like, hey, man, that's what I was just thinking, like, maybe we shouldn't do that anymore, you know?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Good to know.
One of the things that I really liked about which you may disagree with, it sounds like, is I thought that it had really strong characters, and especially female characters. You've got 090. I guess this is a little post-spoilery, so I'll talk about it later. But I thought that both 090 and I-330 and the old lady at the old house, what do they call that again?
The ancient house, I think.
The ancient house. Yeah. I thought they were all like dynamic, different characters. They weren't just like there to kind of support the plot.
I agree with that. Yeah, they had their own ideas. Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with that. They're strong female characters in 1924. You're right. We should hold that up. You're right.
And strong characters in general for like genre fiction that's this old. I think a lot of genre fiction that's this old is just obsessed with the idea and not the literature element at all, which
That's
is maybe
true.
why this novel's lasted so long.
Yeah. Yeah. So the ancient house is just like an apartment building. Basically, it sounds like from our time that you can like go visit as a museum to the bad old days before the 200 years war, I think it was, when they killed literally everyone on the planet who didn't live in their weird lifeless city. But the reason I'm bringing this up is it brings up the thing to me that was actually most chilling about this society. They all live in literal glass houses. It's like they're giant apartment buildings, but like made of glass. So you look around and you can see like everyone else just like suspended in the air. And the idea of living in a house like that and having like even more than the video cameras in 1984 inside your apartment, like the glass houses, I just like, oh God, like I guess you have to kill yourself. Like I just can't even imagine the feeling. Like you don't even have a second to yourself. Oh,
well, that's what the pink slips for intercourse would like allow you. That's what the slip did, is it allowed you to like obfuscate your walls for an hour or whatever it was. But the, yeah, I guess that part was kind of crushing. Maybe I had trouble like imagining it while I was reading it. Never like that image never really stuck with me.
Oh, that's interesting. Maybe this is an old like print versus audiobook thing. Also, maybe the fact that I had to read this book like in 200 settings because I fell asleep so fast.
Wait,
so
you read the print? You read the print version?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely more sleep inducing too. I mean, just physiologically. Like
that's true. Yeah, that's true. But okay. So one of the other things that did really interest me here was he uses a lot of utilitarian language. Like there's a lot of the fact that like, oh, well, that makes you unhappy. Like who cares? It clearly makes the net amount of happiness better, and therefore you individually do not matter. And that's like basically true. It's like utilitarianism just like taken to its logical conclusion, which is like brutal and horrible and like clearly not a society we want to live in. But it just, I felt like it was in my like, freshman philosophy ethics class. Like, here's utilitarianism, and here's why it's actually a bad idea if you really do it. It's like, this is why it's a bad idea.
That's really interesting. I hadn't had that thought, but you're totally right. I think that's like it's why it ends up feeling claustrophobic and that you don't want to live in this society, right? It's the old happiness versus freedom, versus individual freedoms especially, you just like don't get both. You have to balance them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, if you having freedom creates like any amount of unhappiness for a medium number of people, then like, oh, sorry, you don't get to have that freedom because you're making so many people unhappy. And it's like, oh, well, then you just like, you can't be at all uncouth or like do anything that's against the norms. It's just like, oh, it's just, yeah, so crushing so fast.
Right. Which also brings into question like smaller things, like the old lady character. You know, if she was like, I don't like noise after 9 p.m., then everyone has to not be noisy after 9 p.m. It's an interesting, like,
yeah, which
where do
they
you draw
can't.
the line?
I think 9 p.m. is bang hour when you turn your pink slips. I think you actually do have to be quiet after 9 p.m. Literally.
That's late. That's late. I'm glad none of these people are raising children, because 9 p.m. is it's a late hour for anything. One thing I will say about this novel that I was interested in is that D503, his job is like head of the rocket engineer program. Yes, the one state is building the rocket to go into space and teach civilizations across the universe they may run into how the one state works and how it's the best way to live. So that's awful dystopian.
Good old
and silly.
missionaries, space missionaries for totalitarianism. Yep.
Yeah. But I do like that they're acknowledging space. I feel like in other dystopias, which makes maybe more sense to me, they're never thinking about that. It's the authoritarian rulers are just thinking about controlling the people on Earth, which I guess makes more sense because you're.
Yeah, but you can use that kind of thing as a means of control, right? Like the USSR did the space race, they did Sputnik.
True.
You know, China is trying to do all sorts of like interesting space stuff right now, and I think it's a way to like sort of keep your people believing in your system. Is like, oh, look, the system does this cool stuff. Like, so you're right that this is really different than other dystopias, but this is actually, it like rings true to me. Like real life dictators do this kind of stuff for sure. So yeah, I like it a lot.
So not typically that creative, but better if you are creative. More effective, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess
okay.
so.
What do you think about the name One State?
I mean, I love One State. It's the best. It's the best name for the one. I mean, it's the name that I am going to use for this. Like, I can't remember what they are in 1984. I think they're called like Oceania. That sucks. One State. Oceania. One State. It is, for sure. Gilead. Well, I don't know. One State. Boo. Anyway, well, yeah. No, I love it.
In 1984, it's called The Party. I mean, for the actual people who are living under the party, which is kind of cool too. But
that's true.
You bring it up. It's also a good time to talk about George Orwell, 1984 in this.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, haven't we already? He copied Yevgeny's homework. Like he said he copied Yevgeny's homework, right?
Right.
Like,
I mean, I just wanted to make it explicit that he was like, oh my God, I read We and this book's incredible. I want to make that, but for Britain and with some changes. And he just wrote 1984 like
and better and so much better. And so much better though.
Look, I like 1984 too. There's not a huge gap for me. I just thought that we had some good characters, so I gave it a kick. I gave it a kick for that. And I also kind of liked the city. I think it was more fun to me because it was more sci-fi, kind of like Brave New World, instead of just like imagining like drippy brick Britain in the 40s. I was imagining like a cool like glass city where they'd invented stuff and they'd figured out automation and they had secret quarters, whatever.
Speaking of, this was a question I had. Okay, so they mention one of the things in the city they're always describing is the accumulator tower. And all through the book, I was like, at the end, I got to the end and I was like, wait, are we never going to say what the accumulator tower is? He was getting teased the whole time. Or was I just falling asleep all the time and I missed it? What's the deal with the accumulator tower? It's not me. He never says it. Come on.
What are you talking? Wait, real quick. aside, what are you talking about? What's the accumulator tower again?
He just talks about, it's like the building in the city he talks about the most. He just keeps talking about like, oh, at the accumulator tower, but he never says what the fuck is happening at the accumulator tower. What are they accumulating in the tower? I don't know. You've got to say it. It was like at the beginning of the book, I was like, ooh, what a good tease.
Maybe I was just conflating that with like the clock tower where they do all the crazy stuff I won't talk about, but like there's like some towers. I don't know. When I read, I guess I just glossed over that or conflated things.
All right.
Clearly,
in the comments, help us out if it is explained, but if it's not,
clearly, I agree with you. Though it appears it was not important to me either. At least both of us. I blew right past it, and it made you irritated.
Well, it just made me irritated because the first half of the book, I was like, ooh, this is some good teasing. I can't wait to find out what the accumulator tower is. And I got to the end of the book and I was like, well, you're still just going to say accumulator tower? Come on, dog. Like, give me some weird science, or like, maybe are they harvesting souls? That wouldn't fit with the book. But I could riff. We could riff on this a little bit.
Yeah. And I would also say that, that literally meets the definition of irritated, but you know,
that's very fair. Okay. Well, speaking of words, should we talk about some? He had a good. There were some really good words in here that I really liked a lot for our word of the day.
Yeah, let's do some more. Yeah, word of the 3 weeks.
Yeah, word of the 3 weeks. Okay, so pellucid. I don't even know how to say it. Maybe you know how to say it because you listened. Which I've never heard before. But it's like the state of being like clear, basically. Hold on, let me look at the definition of the new word that
pellucid,
I'm saying the definition of.
Yeah.
Translucently clear, of a lucid style. That dude was being so pellucid. I like it. I just never heard it before.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like what it means. It's like
yes, exactly.
slippery and see-through.
Yeah, and like lucid is in there, and it's like the state of being very lucid, lucid seeming. Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah. Speaking of words and good ones, and Yevgeny Zamyatin, I feel like a lot of Russian authors just have these like crushing small phrase ideas, Dostoevsky, all over the place, obviously, like Notes from the Underground. Here are some great lines from We that I loved. The immortal tragedy, late to work. It works in We, it works in this society. It's also just, it's hilarious, but it's also like a little bit true. I mean, it's just perfect. I liked the path of paradox also follows the knife's edge, and it is the only path worthy of the fearless mind. And I think that sums up human existence well to me, like that the answer is always balance and compromise. But we just all want, our primal brains want so badly there just to be like a fundamental truth or an answer or like a stopping point where it's perfect. Okay, laughter can kill anything, even murder. That's a sweet line. Like, you're about ready to murder somebody, and if you truly start laughing, you're probably going to falter. It's disarming.
That's true.
And then here's the final one. When a man's freedom is reduced to zero, there are no more crimes.
Yeah, you're right. Russians are good at this. Russians are definitely really, really good at this.
Yeah,
good shout out for Notes from Underground. I feel like Notes from Underground is just like 1,500 sick lines in a row, and you get to the end.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, that's why my mind is blown. Yeah,
that's why I used that. I mean, what's the one that's always stuck with me? It's like, when you're sick, all you can think about is all of the things that you'll do when you're better and getting better and how great life will be. And then when you're better, you just are angry about all the same things again or something. I mean, that's the sentiment. He writes it way better than I. Obviously, the way I just phrased it is not a memorable line of literature, but
I really liked, on the note of his language, I really liked the way a lot of people actually have sex in this book, but it's done like really well. It doesn't feel like creepy or, overly descriptive of boobs or whatever. It just like, it feels like dreamy and metaphorical, and like, it just, it feels like sex. It feels like very well done. Yeah, I thought he did a really good job.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I think that trickles into the character writing. I think that was another one of the things that kind of surprised me about a book that's a century old now. they didn't nail either sex or character writing, and especially female character writing, that often back then.
No, I feel like it took a steep decline through like the 1960s and 70s, and we've been like coming out of that hole ever since. Anyway,
yeah. So I hope I talked you into liking it a little bit more, or at least convinced you that you fell asleep because of external reasons.
That's possible. Yes.
To be fair, I also had some, there was parts that I was like, all right, I don't know. But I thought it was generally compelling, and I liked the plot, and the ending is sweet.
Yeah. So we got to move toward that. Yeah, let's do it.
Recommendations first. You might be able to guess the first two. Brent, why don't you start?
1984, the crib sheet version of We. We've already done this so many times in this episode. We won't say more. If you haven't read 1984, somehow you should.
And the not crib sheets version is Brave New World, which just feels very based on We, because it's kind of the opposite of the society organization. It's like, instead of ruling through fear and control, we'll rule through just making everyone complacent because they're happy all the time. That's not true, though. That's kind of We.
Yeah, We is like, it's like a mix. We's like both at once. We's interesting. You're right. We's interesting. Okay, fine.
Okay. All right. Hey. Yeah, I do think it's interesting. What was your last rec?
Last rec here is not at all science fiction, but it's a book I think about all the time. One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who it's one day in the life of a guy living in a Soviet gulag. And it's just, you might like to think that you'd be a good person in the gulag, but here's the deal. My God, it's just like, it just puts you in the place, and the place is horrible, and it makes you horrible, and it makes everyone horrible. The guards, the other prisoners, it's just so dehumanizing and awful. And and it's amazing. And also you can read it in one day. It's also a one-day read. It's a very short book. It's really, really amazing. I really can't say enough about it.
Yeah, it's important. It's a very important work of writing.
Yeah, for sure.
I would say.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right. Brent's going to give you the summary of what happens in the rest of We right now.
Okay. So what happens is, D503, our hero, who's writing the journal, gets super horny for I-330. He just cannot get her out of his head. And so he starts trying to follow her around everywhere and figure out what's going on with her cool secret tunnels. She takes him through her cool secret tunnels from the ancient house outside the green wall, which is a glass wall. I don't really understand why it's green. Anyway, and outside there are other people. There's not supposed to be any survivors out there, but there are, and they're all like kind of hairy, but also like really hot. And there's like animals also. Those also weren't supposed to exist. There's like birds and just like hot people hanging out there. And so then there's a vote. There's a vote day where ceremonially the benefactor, who's the dictator, like everybody's supposed to raise their hand at the same time and say like, yo, I vote for the dictator again. But I-330 organizes this thing where a bunch of people do not vote at the same time, and they throw like a riot, and like her uni. How do we not talk about unis? What a great shortening of uniform. Perfect. They definitely should be called unis. Anyway, her uni gets ripped, and she's got one boob out, just like that like famous painting of Liberty from the French Revolution. She's like riling everybody up. And then the benefactor invents a procedure to like take out part of your brain that controls your imagination, and they start like corralling everybody into these auditoriums where they remove the part of your brain that like gives you free will, basically.
Yeah, it's basically a lobotomy, right?
Yeah, for sure. And and then they get D503. He gets lobotomized. He tries to escape on his like spaceship. The rebels are going to take that, but that gets foiled. Yeah, and then he gets lobotomized and is just like part of one state forever. It's real tough.
Well, not only does he get lobotomized, but the last scene is his journal recollection of watching I-330, the woman he loves, getting tortured. and so that they can get the state secrets out of her, and getting tortured until she dies. And since he's lobotomized, he just has a very kind of casual, like matter of fact, wow, she lasted a long time. And it's kind of gutting. I think it's a great like scene to show what the procedure has done to the character. It's a little more visceral than just like, and she died and he had a lobotomy. Like you see how the lobotomy feels and you're seeing the character die at the same time. I thought it was a stellar ending scene.
You may be right that I was too tired when I was trying to read this book, because I didn't even know that. I must have fallen asleep on the last page.
Yeah, for sure. It's like easily
I'm so embarrassed.
Easily the most memorable part of the book. It's incredible ending.
Okay.
It's this scene where he gets all this emotion in one compact thing through just completely atonal prose. It's very compelling. I will also say, point of order, I believe it's called the Green Wall because they don't have trees in the city, but they do outside the city. So the glass wall looks green because of the trees, but they don't know how to describe trees or that they exist. So they just call it the Green Wall.
Interesting. Oh, speaking of, I don't know how I didn't mention this earlier. It was also one of the craziest things about this. Yeah, to your point, they don't have trees inside. They have no plants of any kind. They all eat food made from petroleum, which when I was thinking about it, I was like, oh, I think you actually could do that. That's disgusting and horrible. But maybe you really could do that. It was just like, oh God, petroleum food, but probably you could. Like, yeah, that was a real good dystopian moment.
It's not Soylent Green where you're like, ew, Soylent Green is people, but it's like, yeah, I mean that might work, but ew. Like you said, sometimes ew is the right word. No need to double go. The one qualm I had with the book is that it felt a little Keystone Copy to me. As the one state goes, it was a lot of, are you familiar with that term?
No, what's that mean?
It's like from old comedy movies from long ago. The Keystone Cops are the like bumbling cops who can never, like, you know, they're always slapstick, like tripping over themselves or whatever, trying to catch bad guys. That's how the one state felt. It didn't feel very efficient like it did in 1984.
Oh, you're right. No, the secret police sucked. They were not good at their jobs at all. Yeah.
He just like walked around wherever he wanted. He lied to people all the time. He got doctor's notes to get out of things. And then he would like be in a tunnel and they'd be like, he's down there. And then he would just get out and like walk home on an empty street. I don't know. There was some plot holy stuff like that.
Yeah. And when they threw their like, don't vote for the dictator day, like they didn't have cameras on. So they like didn't know who didn't vote for the dictator. Yeah, you're right. The secret police are not good at being secret police at all.
Yeah. So that didn't ring as true to me. That was really the only shortcoming.
I don't know. Maybe they got lazy. Everybody had been voting yes for the dictator for so long. They're just, they all were just, they were all addicted to banging hotties all the time. They weren't paying attention.
Right. Well, what about the children? You had a thought on that?
Oh yeah. Okay. So 090, is that right? I just remember O. What's her number?
090.
090.
Nailed
yeah.
it.
Okay. So his like lover at the beginning of the book, at one point he basically like dumps her in favor of I-330, and she comes back to him and is like, no, I can't live this way. Like, you got to give me one more pink ticket, and then like I want you to impregnate me, even though that's not allowed. It's very moving. But anyway, he's like, oh, you're going to get arrested, and it gave me I had a question, which I think I also missed due to baby-induced sleepiness. Where do the kids come from? If she's not allowed to be pregnant, where are they? Do they have artificial wombs, or like what's the deal?
No, they're like assigned. She's not allowed to have children because she's too short. And so her genes aren't good for it. So they like match people to have children. It's
and he's got hairy hands, right? So he's probably not selected either.
Oh, maybe that's why. Yeah, the hairy hands. They do selective breeding. So they are really born. Which is also what I thought was so interesting about what I was alluding to earlier about 090 and I-330 being dynamic characters. 090 or I-330 is like kind of the quintessential rebel. She likes being sexually expressive. She doesn't want to follow the rules of the state. She wants to live in nature. She expresses a kind of animalistic individual freedom and also femininity that I found like pretty well written. but 090 follows all the rules, whatever, but she's a rebel in a different way, which is at the end of the book, she wants D5032 to impregnate her, even though she's not allowed, because all she really wants is to be a mother. So she's rebelling in another deeply feminine way, which is to be a mother in a society that will not allow her to be. So I thought that was a really interesting distinction and what made those two characters a lot more rich.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and then our main character, D503, is rebelling just because he thinks I-330 is hot, which I think is also the real reason that that men rebel.
It's not. It's a catalyst. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a catalyst, right? Yeah.
It's like in. Did you see Oppenheimer?
I haven't seen it, no.
Oh, are you kidding me, dude? It's so good. Amazing.
When do you watch? How many movies do you watch?
That was before Gus was born.
Oh, okay. So it was after mine, though.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. I see then why you might have missed it. Anyway, it's very good, and there's a very hot communist in it. It's so hot. Yeah, and communists are hot. We all know. Probably. I don't know. Anyway.
And that's what inspires. I do. I wish I could let it end there, but I really have to say one more thing, which is the version I listened to of We was an audiobook. It had an afterword by Ursula K. Le Guin, which is just so fabulous and rich and full of cool ideas. Le Guin is the best. You can probably just even find it online, but definitely worth reading that too. I loved it. So a little bit of extra. Brent, did I do it? Did I sway you on We at all?
You did. We had a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. Clearly, there's interesting stuff here. It's possible I was sleepy because I don't ever sleep. That's possible, I suppose. It's also possible that this book is old. Anyway, okay, no, you're right.
Right.
You're right. You brought me around for sure. You brought me around. It's for sure a 3. It's not a 2 in my notes. It said maybe a 2. That's not right.
Brought you around, kind of. Okay, well, let us know what you think, and we'll see you next time for some Expanse.
Expand your minds, but actually not like We does. Just expand your fun. Okay, later, dude.
Later.
Bye.